Number 5. Then Combo. Oh my god, this was one of the most memorable. I mean, like, do you remember Combo? He was Jesse's, like, one of his best friends. That scene where he's sipping on the, like, a Slurpee or like a big gulp, and he's dressed in that white outfit, and he's like heavy as it is. He just like looks like a crazy mobster. He's just in the whole white outfit. He has a bald head. He's on the corner, and he's like making these deals. And then these two guys, who we find out later that they're working with Gus Fring, pull up, and it's just so nerve-wracking. You're not sure what's gonna happen, and they're like threatening him. Thinks he has to get off the corner, and Combo is like, you know, slowly backing up, and, you know, make sure he has his gun on him. He's just picking up the phone, calling for help, and then those two drive off to another corner, pull over, and just watch Combo the whole time. So you're like, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna pull out some machine guns? What are they gonna do? And Combo's just like, and it's like dead silent on the street. That was one of the best scenes to me. Then this kid with the bike comes by, and he starts circling around Combo. And you're like, what the hell is going on? You're like, mad confused, like you don't think nothing of this kid. And you know, Combo's telling him like, bounce, bounce, get out of here. And the kid just keeps circling around him with the bike. And then suddenly the kid pulls out the gun and shoots Combo, and Combo dies on the spot. And then those two people pull away. That was like one of the best scenes because, like, number 1, Combo died. Number 2, the way they did it was so unexpected. Number 3, they built the anticipation on that. That was just a great scene. We find out later, by the way, that that kid is associated with, I believe, Andrea, who ends up being like Jesse's like girlfriend at one point in time later in the episode. And that kid actually ends up dying as well. Number 4. Then Jane. This was one of the deaths that really blew my mind. Jane. You remember the Jane, the heroin addict? Who basically Jesse fell for. Jesse falls for like every girl, but that was like, I think his first like true love. He really loved Jane, the heroin addict. She was the daughter of the landlord. She lived next door. They ended up getting close, and she was a heroin addict. And you know, Jesse was already trying to avoid the meth and trying to avoid drugs. She was like clean for a while, and then she wanted to fall back into it, and then she brought Jesse into it in the scene where they just like lifted up like in a cloud. Then one night Walter comes to talk to Jesse, and they're both high, drugged up. They're basically like, they're like in a coma from the heroin high, and they're laying down. So Walter has to break in, and he sees Jane flip over on her back. And when you're that high on like heroin, your body doesn't even have the energy to wake yourself up. So if you throw up, you'll actually just gag on your own throw up and die. So he saw her actually start gagging and choking, and he was about to go help her. He just lets her die, and then lets Jesse discover her dead body in the morning. That was pretty emotional because Jesse like really loved her. Number 3, the next death was Mike. This is down on the list because Mike was one of the really important characters, and you really didn't expect Walter to be the one to take him out. So what happens is Mike is about to get caught. Walter goes and grabs all the stuff like Mike's passport and a gun, and he goes to give that bag to Mike. And then when he's talking to Mike, Mike doesn't seem grateful. Mike is not really like, is not saying thank you to him, and Mike's like saying like basically like fuck off and I'm gonna leave. And it kind of pissed Walter off because he didn't feel his power. It was like just someone like trying to just diss him. So what happens is Mike walks off, and he opens his bag and realizes that the gun is not in there, that Walter has it. And then Walter just nervously like screams, "You're welcome!" And then he just like walks over, storms nervously to the window, and shoots Mike in like the belly. Mike's like tried to drive off, but he like drives off and crashes, gets out of the car and like walks to the river. And then you see Walter go to him, and Walter's like really nervous because I'm not even sure like, did he really do just what he just did? Basically Mike just like curses him right before his own death. He just looks out into the river and he just dies quietly. So that was a pretty sad death. Number 2, Gail. Number 2 on the list. Gail is almost number 1 because Gail's death was one of the most emotional, nerve-wracking deaths. I believe it was actually Jesse's only kill in the story, and he kind of had to do it or else Walter would have completely died. Not half died, but completely, right? Why did I say completely died? Gail was Walter's assistant before Jesse was accepted into Gus's camp. Gus had Gail try to fully absorb Walter's formula so that Gail could replace Walter eventually. That's something Walter found out. When Walter discovered this, it was too late though, because Gus had already intended to kill him and told him, "You're gonna be replaced and I'm gonna get rid of you." So Gus had already sent out Mike to get rid of Walter. Walter then somehow convinced Mike to let him call Jesse right before Mike was about to kill him. On that call, he yells out to Jesse to go and kill Gail right now or else he would die. So Jesse takes his gun, runs off, and does it without even thinking. Jesse, who killed no one throughout the entire show, has one of the most emotional kills when he kills Gail. And Gus sends out Victor to try to stop it, but it doesn't work. Jesse knocks. Gail opens the door, looks him in the eye, recognizes him. Jesse looks at him in tears. Gale starts backing away and tells Jesse to take whatever he wants. He tells him that he doesn't have to do it, and you see Gale like really nervous. He knows he's about to die, and he's trying to plead for his life. Jesse, all teared up, looks him in the eye, shoots Gale. This was one of the most emotional because not only was like Jesse's first kill, you kind of started to feel comforted by Gale. Like, he was such a nice character. He really liked Walter. He didn't deserve to die. He was just like in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was caught up with the Gus thing, and Gus is the one who masterminded it, and he just happened to be like the pawn, and he had to get rid of him. And to see Jesse like get his first kill, I mean, it was almost #1, but nothing beats the #1 kill in Breaking Bad, and the #1 Breaking Bad kill of all time, which is finally the death of Gus Fring, who like basically taunted who was like the mastermind and the taunter to all of season 3 and season 4. Gus, the top dog who vowed to kill Walter and his entire family if Walter ever came in between him and Jesse. He was killed by Walter. Walter set up Gus using Hector Salamanca, who was crippled in a wheelchair, living in an old folks home, and Hector was always really degraded by Gus because Gus rose up and like killed all his like family and killed like most of the cartel, you know, and Gus would always go to him and like taunt him about the deaths. And after Gus killed all the important people in the cartel, Walter made a plan. Walter made it look like Hector Salamanca was going to talk to the DEA. He knew Gus would pay attention to that. I mean, Hector didn't say anything to the DEA, but knowing that Gus, after seeing that, would eventually have to pay a visit to Hector in the old folks home, Walter makes an agreement with Hector that he would plant a bomb on his wheelchair that he could detonate once Gus got close enough. Hector, having nothing else to live for, agreed to sacrifice his own life to kill Gus. If it wasn't for Hector, Walter wouldn't have been able to get at Gus. But Hector had nothing else to live for. He was so done with Gus taunting him. He was old already. And he figured he'd sacrifice his life and get his revenge at the end. Not a good way to die, but it was the most memorable because just the way it happened, and then Hector never looks at Gus, but finally he actually looked at Gus in the eye, and he started like, you know, doing his face, but he eventually looked at him and he just started ringing the bell, and then Walter detonates the bomb. Gus realizes it right before, and he screams, ah! Walter detonates the bomb, and it's a massive explosion, and you just see all the rubble in the hospital room, and then suddenly, you know, you see Gus stand up looking like a zombie. He had like a half zombie face. And you're like, oh my god, is he really gonna survive this? And you're like, no, and he just fixes his tie and just falls back. I mean, it was just awesome. That was one of the most, I mean, I see that as #1 because Gus was like the head guy from like season 3, season 4. We've all been waiting for everyone to catch him, and he was really the thing standing in the way between Walter and his success. And Walter basically eventually replaces Gus. That's been the top 10 kills. Go ahead and like this video if you love Breaking Bad, and leave a comment below. Tell me what was your favorite kill of Breaking Bad. See you guys in the next video. And he sees that there's one piece shaped like a dagger missing. That blew my mind. I love that scene. I was just like, oh my gosh. That was the first thing that showed how smart Walter was. And you're like, oh my god, Crazy 8 took it. He was actually about to kill Walter when he let him go. Right when he was about to let him go. So then he went to go down and he was telling Crazy 8 that he was going to release him. And you were a little nervous. Like,